The Color Purple is perhaps one of the greatest novels to ever talk about self-discovery. All across the world, people have stated that it's a new national treasure, of remarkable expressiveness, color, and poignancy, marvelous characters, and richly evocative. And they're all right. The Color Purple truly is a masterpiece of literature. It was written in 1982 by Alice Walker, author of New York Times bestsellers such as The Temple of My Familiar, Possessing the Secret of Joy, and many other short stories and poems. 3 years later, the book turned into a movie directed by Steven Spielberg and starring big-name actors such as Danny Glover and Oprah Winfrey. The story takes place in rural Georgia during the Great Depression, where Celie, the protagonist, writes letters to God retelling her day, included with a personal reflection about it. And that's what makes the book so interesting, the way it's written. It's unique how every part of the book is a letter written to God. I've never seen a book like that. But since the story is written letter by letter, there are no chapters, which can be good depending on how you look at it. If you wanted to stop reading anytime soon, one would usually consider reading to the end of the chapter, but in The Color Purple, you could just end at any letter. So for a brief summary, the story begins with Celie writing her first letter to God saying that her mother is really sick, and with that, Celie's father Alfonso molests her according to the first page. "You gonna do what your mommy wouldn't. First put this thing up against my hip and sort of wiggle it around. Then he grabbed hold of my titties, and then he started to shove that thing up." What kind of introduction is this? Yeah, it may seem crude, but I guess the author wanted to show you exactly what's going on for Celie. Ugh. But thankfully, the book only talks about Celie being molested on the first page, so we can move on. Alfonso has already gotten Celie pregnant once. She gave birth to a girl whom her father stole and supposedly killed in the woods. Wait. Now we're bringing murder into this? This is horrible. I mean, this book is obviously not for younger children. If you're going to write a story containing rape, murder, and abuse, don't name it after a color that kids will like. So anyway, Celie has a second child, a boy whom her father also steals. Celie's mother becomes seriously ill and dies. Alfonso brings home a new wife, but continues to abuse Celie. The fun just never ends for that poor girl. Celie and her smart, pretty, and younger sister Nettie learn that a man known as only Mr. Blank wants to marry Nettie. Mr. Blank has a lover named Shug Avery, a renowned lounge singer whose appearance fascinates Celie. Alfonso refuses to let Nettie marry Mr. Blank and instead offers Mr. Blank the ugly Celie as a bride. I guess Alfonso wanted the daughter to himself. Mr. Blank eventually accepts the offer and takes Celie into a difficult and joyless married life. Nettie runs away from Alfonso and takes refuge at Celie's house, but Mr. Blank still loves Nettie, and when he tries to hit on her, she flees for her own safety. Never hearing from Nettie again, Celie assumes that she's dead. Anyways, Mr. Blank's sister Kate feels sorry for Celie and tells her to fight back against Mr. Blank rather than to submit to his abuses. Harpo, Mr. Blank's son, falls in love with a large, spunky girl named Sophia. Okay, who is this Mr. Blank? Because it's really annoying having to say his name all the time. And when you're reading the book, you immediately notice all of the blank spaces on the page. If the author's not going to name this guy, then I will. How about Mr. Cheese, Mr. Sub, or even Mr. Richard Simmons? So anyways, Shug Avery comes to a town to sing at a local bar, but Celie's not allowed to go see her because Mr. Cheese won't let her. Sophia becomes pregnant and marries Harpo, and because of that, Celie is amazed by Sophia's defiance in the face of Harpo's and Mr. Cheese's attempt to treat Sophia as an inferior. Now with Harpo and Sophia, Harpo's attempts to beat Sophia always ends up giving Harpo a black eye, as Sophia is by far physically stronger of the two. Yeah, you go girl. Shug Avery becomes sick with alcohol poisoning, and Mr. Cheese takes her into his house. Shug is initially rude to Celie, but the two women become friends as Celie takes charge of nursing Shug. Celie finds herself infatuated with Shug and is attracted to her sexually. Okay, so now we're bringing gay love into this novel. Well, I'm not surprised considering how much of an asshole men are to Celie, but it's weird how all this inappropriate content made the book so successful. Maybe everyone's just a bunch of perverts. Shug decides to stay with Celie when she learns that Mr. Cheese beats Celie whenever Shug is out singing. Shug and Celie's relationship grows more intimate every day, and Shug begins asking Celie questions about sex. I'm not going to get into too many details with that. I wouldn't want to spoil the fun for you guys. So since Sophia is frustrated with Harpo's attempts to take control of her, Sophia moves out, taking her children. Several months later, Harpo opens a neighborhood bar where Shug Avery sings nightly. During that time, Celie grows confused over her lesbian feelings towards Shug. Sophia returns for a visit one day and gets in a fight with Harpo's new girlfriend, Squeak. In town one day, the mayor's wife, Miss Mealy, asks Sophia to work as her maid. Sophia answers with a sassy, "Hell no!" When the mayor slaps Sophia for her toughness, she returns the blow, knocking the mayor down. Damn. Celia could learn from that, Sophia, not to take crap from anyone. Later on in the book, Shug Avery returns to Celia with a new husband, Germain. Despite her marriage, Shug manages a sexual relationship with Celia, and the two frequently share the same bed. Yeah. One night, Shug asks Celia about her sister Nettie. Celia assumes that Nettie is dead because she has promised to write to Celia, but never did. Shug says that she has seen Mr. Cheese hide away numerous mysterious letters that have arrived in the mail. Now you can see why the story's getting interesting. Shug manages to get her hands on one of these letters and takes it to Celia. They find that it's from Nettie. Searching through Mr. Cheese's trunk, Celia and Shug find dozens of letters that Nettie has sent to Celia over the years, along with a variety of Richard Simmons workout tapes. Yeah, just kidding. Overcome with emotions of murder and stress, Celia reads the letters in order, wondering how to keep herself from killing Mr. Cheese. The letters say that Celia has been living a life in Africa with a couple that adopted Celia's kids, whom she thought were dead. They also say that Alfonso isn't their real dad. Meanwhile, Alfonso talks to Celia and tells her that he isn't their real father. Their real father was killed, and Alfonso became their new father so he could inherit the house that was going to belong to Celia. This guy shows no mercy for the poor girls. Because of what's been going on, Celia loses her faith in God, but Shug Avery tries to get her to reimagine God in her own way, like simply the color purple, rather than the traditional image of the old bearded white men that we hear in Christian books. Which brings us to the dinner scene. This happens to be my favorite part in the book. Celia finally releases her pent-up rage, angrily cursing Mr. Cheese for his years of abuse in front of all of the main characters in the book. She then brings a knife out to his neck, threatening to kill him right in front of her friends and family. Sophia tells Celia that Mr. Cheese isn't worth killing, considering she knows the consequences from breaking the law. After the conflict, Shug announces that she and Celia are moving back to Tennessee, and Squeak decides to go with them. While the women are happy, the men are angry, and Mr. Cheese throws all of his insults he has at Celia before she can leave, calling her poor, skinny, funny-looking, and can never satisfy a man. Celia's response, which happens to be my favorite line of the book, is, "I may be poor, I may be ugly, I may be a waste of life, but god dang it, I'm here." So inspiring. Once they arrive at Tennessee, Celia spends her time designing and sewing individually tailored pairs of pants, eventually turning her hobby into a business. Celia returns to Georgia for a visit and finds that Mr. Cheese has become a better person and that Alfonso has died. Alfonso's house and the land are now belonging to Celia, so she moves back. Meanwhile, Nettie and Samuel decide to get married and live in Africa, leaving Celia behind once again. Sophia and Harpo also decide to get back together. I guess Harpo likes it rough. Since Shug Avery has Germain, Nettie has Samuel, and Sophia has Harpo, the only man left for Celia is Mr. Cheese. But he's become a good man, and he's actually respectful towards Celia. And since Celia's life has been getting better, she is able to ignore her past with Mr. Cheese and Shug's love for Germain. And finally, at the end of the book, Nettie returns to America with her family, and even though through Celia's tough years, she's never felt any younger and any more freedom in her life. Now you can see why this book is so greatly respected. Celia develops a sense of herself and is able to move on and have a better life. And that's the main theme of The Color Purple, self-discovery. Throughout the entire book, Celia is constantly expressing her feelings to God through written letters. She also notices that Shug Avery and Sophia stood up towards their abuse from men and influenced that upon her. And lastly, learning new secrets about her family, such as her kids still being alive, and how Alfonso isn't their real father, are amazing discoveries for Celia, because she is technically a new person after hearing all that. Being that I'm a man, I couldn't easily relate to Walker's message to women. However, I did relate to the message of self-discovery and triumph, because I too, like many people, have had dark pasts. But luckily, I've managed to move on from my past and embrace the new future as a good one. Now, I always thought that The Color Purple was a story about racism, considering its time and characters, but it barely mentions racism in the book, because there's more to this book than just racism. There's love, hate, honesty, self-discovery, triumph, hardships, and lastly, lesbian passion. The true symbol of the book is God. Without Celia seeing God as her only friend to express herself to, she would have never have learned to immerse from her aloof state, and I refer to God as a symbol instead of a person, the same reason Celia refers to God to being purple. God can be anything for her, and that's the way she likes it. This is perhaps one of the greatest books I've ever read in my life, and I think it's easy to say that after talking about the story. So if you're looking for an ISP book to read next year, you should definitely consider this. It's interesting to read, it gives very good messages, and it may even turn you into a better person. The color purple is a masterpiece, and that's all I have left to say.